The folks that think we are and folks like myself are delusional when we look at like, okay, sure, they may be tied to mega corporate entities, which is a big benefit, make no mistake. But it's two ideas. They think that one, the Marvels and the DCs of the world can't be competed with, which is insane, by the way, in the comic book space at that. But also they forget history. And we're going to go through some of that history here in a little bit. But I think this is the part that people need to understand. So for the guys that think, okay, well, all right, you got brands that are trying to do their own independent thing. And yes, a lot of the independent things are going to fail. It's just the nature of it. You get a bunch of people that are going to try, and some people will rise, others won't. But there are folks that think Marvel DC, because it's such a staple of American culture, that they can't be competed with in the comic books. And I reject that notion wholeheartedly. For starters, folks that don't have their pulse on like the actual book industry don't seem to understand that Marvel and DC don't even dominate their own market. We're not talking about movies. We're not talking about that. They don't dominate their own market in the books. Right now, Marvel and DC is being creamed by fucking the Japanese, period. Japanese are kicking their ass up and down. And a lot of these brands are newer brands. Yes, you have the One Pieces of the world that have been around for a while that are always going to be in the mix. But when you consider something like Jujutsu Kaisen and you consider something like Demon Slayer, these are relatively new phenomena, relatively new mangas and animes. And they are beating the shit out of Marvel and DC right now. And there'll be another new property that'll come out soon enough, and it'll do the same fucking thing. So they don't even dominate their own market in the West. We're not talking about in Japan. We're talking about like in America. They are getting dominated right now. You don't have to take my word for anything. Just go look it up. We've been covering these things along the way. So they're not even winning their own market. Okay, they produce a lot of material. They put out a shitload of books, but they're not, as far as like a top, like what people are more interested in right now. They're more interested in manga if it's not attached to like Batman or maybe Superman or something like that. It's just the reality of the situation. And so that's first and foremost. But second, I think people seem to forget that despite people knowing who these characters were, right? Marvel, we're not that far removed. 20 years. We're not that far removed from Marvel basically going bankrupt. Not basically, that's what happened. In the mid-90s, going into the late 90s. Why on earth do you think all those properties were split up in the fucking first place? When Sony got, a lot of people just think that it's just by chance that Sony got the rights and to this. But as documented right here, this came out of the effort of the Chapter 11 bankruptcy at the end of 1996. And that's how Sony got fucking hold of Spider-Man. People forget that they went bankrupt. They went fucking bankrupt. They were broke. They were broke. We're not that far removed from this. This was in our lifetime, guys. We're not that far removed from this. Where they went under. Despite everybody knowing who the fuck Spider-Man was, despite the X-Men animated series was like the biggest thing happening. That was only a few years before this. Hell, it might have been going on. I mean, maybe the last season while this was taking place. They were broke. They had no money. Yeah, some business decisions that got them in the position. But it goes to show just because people know who you are, does not mean that, and we'll read a little bit of this article in a minute, but it does not mean that you have to forever stay where you're at. Marvel Studios' interconnected universes of films spanning 10 years, blah, blah, blah. It's not bad considering that 1996. Marvel mired in bankruptcy, and a decade later banked its nascent film franchise on a second-tier hero called Iron Man. And it worked. In 1996, Marvel was forced to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy after the comic book industry started to collapse in the 90s. After tense legal battles and struggles to pay creditors, the company was salvaged in 1997 and merged with Isaac Perlmutter, you know who that is, and his Toy Biz. The Israel-born toy manufacturer entrusted his business partner, Avi Arad, to help dig Marvel out of its slump. Arad wooed bankers and preached the value of Marvel's characters according to the 2012 Slate article on Studios' rise. Marvel also auctioned off the film rights to its most prized characters. Again, like we mentioned, with Spider, this actually happened. This was not that long ago. I know who they won't give credit to for reviving Marvel, unfortunately, is fucking Blade, because Blade came out right during all of this and was like was the biggest fucking thing for fucking popping. That was like what, 98, 99 when the first movie came out. I would say this. I said it before, but I'll say it again. When you look at the market share of that, let's say, people make up in their industries, these various companies, even the ones that are mega corporate entities, which again, you have a benefit by being tied to that because you can subsidize other projects, right? So it can be a little tricky. But the difference is that despite it being tricky, there's folks that have had in the past of various, and I ain't even talking just with entertainment, larger market shares than what Marvel or DC has in terms of what they dominate and have went away. So what I mean by that is that if they went away, you think of the various companies that have come and gone over the years that were on top of the fucking world and have come and gone over the years, even if they've been around for a while, what makes you think Marvel or DC can't be that? When you have in your own lifetime, it happened to them. You know, it's not an impossible feat. And it's more easier now than it ever had been because, well, the means. People can do things and create things in a capacity that they simply could not do back in the day. They couldn't. So now you have people that turn into superstars overnight and skip the line, basically. They don't go through the proper channels. They don't go through all of these, all of what the industry standard was, because there is no industry standard anymore. Maybe for them and what it is that the mega corporate entities control. But shit, you can upload, you got a direct line of sight with your audience and you can be in the mix like tomorrow. So considering that they don't even dominate their market right now. And we've seen in our own lifetimes, Marvel basically, despite everybody knowing who these characters were, got ran into the fucking ground. What makes you think it can't happen again to a degree that they might not come back from? At least not to what they did before. It's very, very possible. It's easier now than ever. It's because of exactly that. People are be able to be more competitive these days, right? You have people, which again was nearly impossible during the time. And this is why for those like who well, it was a different time. The fact that it was a different time lends itself to my argument, not yours. Why? Because now you have people that are getting rich in the comic book industry. We've talked to them. We've had a lot of guys that have been in the crowdfunding space, been able to make money, lots of it, having not needed to go through the proper channels. Why? Just because the existence of the internet has allowed us a lot of different things to be able to do. So why not is what I ask. Says who is what I ask. When they say you can't do it, when they say it cannot be done, they say that you are in a position, they're too powerful. I say, so what? They went under before. It might not happen overnight, but it is not impossible. And they don't even dominate their own market. Their primary market, they don't even dominate. That's all I'm saying.
You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.